This is going to be a long video about the boring reality of why the Western Roman Empire fell. So up in the screen I'm going to put all of the different reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell, and probably this is not going to be an extensive list. I think that I could add more if I probably put more thought about it, but I'm going to go into all of the different reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell. The Western Roman Empire fell because Emperor Valentinian was killed. I think that this is not something that people are going to dispute. This is something that is going to be very obvious. But when Emperor Valentinian was in the throne, he was killed. And when he was killed, there was a crisis of who got to be the next emperor. And the answer to that question never got solved, because after he was killed, there was nobody who could claim the Western Roman Empire, the throne, never claimed it. Yes, people tried. You have different people like Majorian, you have different people like Julius Nepos, you have Avitius, you have Glacarius, you have so many emperors, but one after the other, they were dropping like flies. By the time that all of these different emperors came to be, the Western Roman Empire was so unstable that it is difficult to argue that, it was their fault that the Western Roman Empire fell. We could argue that they couldn't pick up the pieces, but once Valentinian died, then who who can really realistically who could actually pick up the pieces? Nobody could. So it is obvious that the death of Valentinian was a big reason why the Western Roman Empire fell. The Western Roman Empire fell because Aetius was killed. I think that this is another one that is extremely obvious. The reason that is really important is because Valentinian was killed, so Emperor Valentinian was killed because he, Valentinian, killed Aetius. So we have this domino effect where if Emperor Valentinian didn't kill Aetius, then Valentinian wouldn't have been killed, and that wouldn't have led to the period of instability after Emperor Valentinian's death. The Western Roman Empire fell because Galla Placidia declared Bonifacius an enemy of the state. So this is something that maybe is not so obvious. The reason this was one of the reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell is because Galla Placidia declared Bonifacius an enemy of the state. Bonifacius didn't want to die, he didn't want to be killed, so he asked help from the Vandals. So he called up the Vandals into Africa, and what happens is that the Vandals end up pretty much taking Africa. And ever since that happened, the Western Roman Empire will try and fail to capture or retake Africa from the Vandals. One time after another, the Roman government will try and they will fail over and over and over. Majorian tried, a lot of people tried, Ricimer tried, so many people tried, but all of them failed. And that's why this is one of the reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell, because if that didn't happen, then the recapture of Africa probably wouldn't have to be something that to worry about. The Western Roman Empire fell because Bonifacius didn't want to get executed and he asked help from the Vandals. I think that this is again one of those things that it is pretty obvious. If Bonifacius didn't have any help, then probably Galla Placidia would have get away with his execution. But for the better or for the worst, in the case of people who like the Western Roman Empire, for the worst, uh, Bonifacius asked for help from the Vandals, and the Vandals were really willing to help him. So that's why, you know, Bonifacius, the willingness of Bonifacius to ask the Vandals, that's one of the reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell, because if he didn't have that willingness, or if he didn't do that, then, well, probably the Western Roman Empire wouldn't have fallen, or the capture of Africa wouldn't have happened, and that would have meant that the Roman Empire would have been more stable. But that was not the case. The Western Roman Empire fell because the Vandals were willing to go to Africa. So if you know anything about history, you know that the Vandals were desperate when they certainly were asked by Bonifacius to go to Africa. So the Vandals pretty much were fighting against the Visigoths over the control of Roman Hispania. And well, that's why they were very willing. If the Vandals didn't have that willingness, or if the Vandals were not willing to risk going to Africa, probably Africa would have remained under Roman control, but that wasn't the case. The Vandals were very willing to go to Africa and to help Bonifacius when Galla Placidia declared him an enemy of the state. The reason the Western Roman Empire fell is because the Vandals were successful on taking Roman Africa once they were there. This is one of those things that, again, it is pretty obvious. The Vandals were successful at taking Africa. So Bonifacius pretty much was pardoned. So Galla Placidia declares Bonifacius an enemy of the state. Bonifacius pretty much asks the Vandals for help. The Vandals go to Africa to help Bonifacius. Galla Placidia doesn't like that, so Galla Placidia tells Bonifacius, if you fight off the Vandals, then I am going to forgive you and we can mend things up. But that's not, but sadly for Bonifacius, Bonifacius was not successful on kicking out the Vandals of Africa. So for the better or for the worse, once the Vandals got into Africa, they were extremely successful, and Bonifacius was not able to kick them out of Africa. So one of the reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell is because the Vandals were really successful. One of the reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell is because the Vandals were in Hispania, in Roman Hispania. This is one of those things that, again, it is pretty obvious. If the Vandals were not in a horrible position because of the constant fights against the Visigoths, and then they wouldn't have been willing to help Bonifacius, but they were very willing. So it's one of those things that if the Vandals were not in Hispania at the time that they were, probably they wouldn't have been able to take Africa. So it's just bad timing. But that brings up the following question: why were the Vandals in Roman Hispania? Well, that brings up the following reason why the Western Roman Empire fell: because the Vandals went to Hispania to help the Roman general Gerontius on his revolt against Emperor Honorius. Gerontius was a Roman general who revolted against the Emperor Honorius. And when he did that, he didn't have enough troops, he didn't have enough soldiers. What do you do when you don't have enough soldiers? Enough Roman soldiers? That is right, you ask help from barbarians. And that's what Gerontius did. Gerontius asked the Vandals. I think that Gerontius asked help from the Suevi, Alans, and Vandals. So he asked for help from a couple of people, if I remember correctly. And he received help. So if it were not for that particular revolt, then the Vandals would not have been in Hispania ready to help Bonifacius. So again, it's one of those domino effects where if it was not for that revolt, then we wouldn't have been other problems down the line. And that brings up another issue. Why was Gerontius revolting? Which brings the next reason why the Western Roman Empire fell. The Western Roman Empire fell because the Roman general Gerontius revolted against Emperor Honorius because of the deal that Emperor Honorius made with Constantine. So Constantine was another soldier who revolted against Emperor Honorius, but Constantine revolted with Gerontius. So Gerontius and Constantine, they revolted with one another. But then Honorius, Emperor Honorius, went to Constantine and told him, what do I have to do for you to put down your arms? And Constantine just said, well, make me a co-emperor and I'll do that. And Emperor Honorius said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. But they didn't deal with Gerontius, and Gerontius probably felt left out. And that's why Gerontius revolted against that deal. If Constantine and Honorius reach an agreement where Gerontius also was left in a good position, probably Gerontius wouldn't have called help from barbarians, and that would have been good, because otherwise, as we saw, Gerontius will call the Vandals and the Suevi and the Alans and all of these barbarians into Hispania, and avoiding all of those Germanic people into the Roman Empire would have been better for the Western Roman Empire, but that didn't happen. What happened is that Constantine and Emperor Honorius, they made their own deals and they left Gerontius out, and this made him upset, and that's why we have again a domino effect where a bunch of people were displeased, and we have just more troubles down the line. One of the reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell is because Emperor Honorius wanted her sister back. If you know anything about this period of time, is that the Visigoths captured Galla Placidia, and actually the Visigoths tried to marry one of his kings to Galla Placidia in an attempt to pretty much get their own claims to the Western Roman Empire. And Honorius didn't like that. So Honorius pretty much was very willing to give the Visigoths pretty much anything. And the Visigoths were very willing to accept almost anything because they were very hungry. So at the time that all of this was happening, the Visigoths wanted a place to live, so they wanted a roof over their head, and they wanted food. So they were very willing to give the emperor whatever they wanted, and Honorius was very willing to give these barbarians whatever they wanted, because you don't want some Visigoths having claim to the Western Roman Empire because Galla Placidia, because of your sister having some Visigothic babies. So that's one of the reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell. One of the reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell is because Galla Placidia was captured. For the reason that I have explained before, it is obvious that if it was not for the capture of Galla Placidia, the Visigoths would have not been in a good position to negotiate for land and for food. So that's one of the reasons why this is just one of the multiple reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell. One of the reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell is because the Visigoths sacked the city of Rome when Emperor Honorius refused to pay them for their military service. This is one of the things that it is, again, it is obvious if you read the history of Rome. You know that the Visigoths were employed by the Western Roman Empire as a military, and there was a point where the emperor or the Roman government, because this was not a decision taken only by the emperor, only by Emperor Honorius, but by the Roman government, they didn't want to pay the Visigoths the money that they were owed, but because of the services they gave to the Western Roman Empire. As a result, the Visigoths ended up sacking the city of Rome. And when they did the sacking, Galla Placidia was captured. And as we have seen, the capture of Galla Placidia led to Honorius giving land to the Visigoths. So not paying the soldiers pretty much resulted in the Visigoths gaining land in the Western Roman Empire, which is something not good when it comes to keeping the Visigoths out of the Western Roman Empire. One of the reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell is because Stilicho, the Roman general Stilicho, used the Visigoths for what he probably thought is going to be a civil war. The Visigoths were employed by Stilicho, but later on Stilicho is killed, and then the Roman government doesn't pay the Visigoths for the military service that they gave to the Roman Empire. So the Visigoths end up sacking the city of Rome. In the sack of Rome, they capture Galla Placidia. By capturing Galla Placidia, then they have leverage on a settlement that they ultimately had within the borders of the Western Roman Empire, which gave them a lot of power later on, which is why it was really bad to employ the Visigoths in the military. Of course, Stilicho was trying to protect his power, or he wanted to hoard the power, so that's why he wanted to employ the Visigoths. And this is why Stilicho was a selfish man, and he certainly is not certainly by being selfish, he contributed to the fall of the Western Roman Empire. And this brings the following reason. The reason why the Western Roman Empire fell is because the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire were likely to have a civil war over the issue of power. Stilicho was concerned about a potential civil war, and that's why he wanted to employ the Visigoths in that incoming civil war. Stilicho was pretty much just looking out for power. He wanted to keep military power. He wanted to keep as much as possible. That's why he kept claiming that Arcadius, the Eastern Roman Emperor, should be under his care, so under his control, while the Eastern Roman Empire claimed that that shouldn't be the case, and Stilicho was very willing to go to war for that reason. And all of these problems, all of these disagreements between the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire pretty much led Stilicho to prepare for probably a civil war. And this is why he wanted to use the Visigoths. Of course, that's not something that it was really popular with Roman soldiers, but what are you going to do? Actually, that's why Stilicho ends up being killed. And last but not least, one of the biggest reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell is because of the power struggle between people in the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire. These were problems that came from the top, so pretty much Stilicho wanted to have more control over the Eastern Roman Empire, but people from the Eastern Roman Empire didn't want to give control to Stilicho. Stilicho wanted to keep control over the army, but the Eastern Roman Empire didn't want to give control of the army. So all of these problems led them to try to hoard power. They tried to hire people, so pretty much hire barbarians, foreign people to fight for them. And ultimately, as we have seen, because of the many examples before, that was not a pretty idea. That's not a good idea. It was a good idea at the time, but down the line, those ideas pretty much backfire on the Western Roman Empire. So at the end of the day, the reason why the Western Roman Empire fell is because of many different reasons. I have just listed a couple of them, and I don't think that I have explained them as thoroughly as I should have, because they are so complicated, they are so long, and people really don't care about that because it is boring. It is boring just to know that the reason why the Western Roman Empire fell, it has nothing to do with maybe depravity. It has nothing to do with any ideology. It doesn't, my God, it doesn't even have to do anything with religion, which is something that I'm just noticing, that it doesn't even have to do, the fall of the Western Roman Empire doesn't even have to do anything with religion. As we have seen, the reason why if the Western Roman Empire fell were for other reasons that contributed, but not for the religion. So the reason why the Western Roman Empire fell is because there was power struggle between different people at different times, and the decisions that those people took were not good decisions for the empire. All of their decisions contributed to the fall of Rome.